This science fiction story begins with a Soviet Union spacecraft, which was working on a secret mission and was returning to Earth from space. Russia had cleverly launched this mission as part of a strategy to wage a war against its enemies. The astronaut ship was supposed to go into space and research some satellites. However, when the spacecraft pilot entered Earth's orbit, disturbances began, and he couldn't control it properly. The spaceship started falling rapidly. Inside the spaceship, there was a liquid that began leaking in large quantities. What this liquid was would soon be discovered, but it was certain that the pilot's life was in danger. He couldn't control the ship at all and crashed into Antarctica, meaning he landed in the icy waters. The Soviet Union made many attempts to find the pilot, but to no avail. Several research missions were conducted, but they found nothing. Months later, we are introduced to Steven, a professor, along with his two students, CD and Renal, who were on a research mission. They had received government funding to conduct research, specifically to prepare reports on the migration of whales in the ocean. This was the reason why the three of them set off towards a port. Steven, who was very selfish and only thought about himself, was traveling with his two students towards the port, where they would conduct their research aboard a large ship. The ship was named the Harbinger, which belonged to none other than CD's grandfather. Upon CD's request, her grandfather, named Graf, agreed to let the three of them conduct their research aboard his ship. The three of them soon boarded Graf's ship and stored their belongings. Graf, using his ship, was involved in crab fishing, a highly profitable business, which had always been lucrative for him. After their arrival, all the crew members greeted Steven, CD, and Renal. Among the crew was a man named Doc, who handled medical emergencies, as well as several others like Etka, Sweat, and Roland, who each had their own specific duties and were experts in their fields. After settling in, CD explained the purpose of their research, saying that the government wanted them to investigate the migration patterns of the whales and what their movement and migration might signify. This is exactly what the government wanted to know, and if CD completes the research successfully, she will receive a generous scholarship. CD's grandfather, Graf, gives her permission for the research, as he usually does his crab fishing at night. During the day, Steven and his students could continue their research without any issues. With this permission, they all happily began their work. As CD and Renal were unpacking their equipment, they were visited by Bo and Etka, who were intrigued because they had never seen such equipment before. Renal showed them a small machine, explaining that it had the ability to analyze samples from any animal or species and provide detailed information about its body structure and overall composition. This machine was highly advanced. CD then took out her radar to track the whales more efficiently. However, shortly after, her grandfather, Graf, called her for a meeting. She went to him, and they had a conversation about how she was doing. It had been a long time since Graf had spent time with his granddaughter. CD had lived with her parents, and she told him she missed him. Graf, due to his work, was always away and had very little time to spend with his family, so there wasn't much attachment between them. After the brief chat, CD left to rest, as she was tired. By night, the crew members went out for fishing, casting their nets to catch various crabs. CD was monitoring her radar and noticed something strange. As she was about to go to sleep, she realized that there were many whales surrounding their ship. The movement of these whales was very unusual. CD tried to wake Renal to tell her about it, but she was deep in sleep. Steven didn't wake up either, as he was feeling unwell after coming aboard the ship. So, CD decided not to disturb anyone and went outside with some of her equipment to conduct her own research. While some workers continued catching crabs, CD used the radar to observe the things underwater, and with the help of her equipment, she began to notice the whales swimming nearby. The whales were migrating in a group, heading somewhere. Amidst all this, CD noticed a strange, glowing structure emitting continuous lighting, almost like it was some kind of shining machine. But what was this unknown object doing here? To confirm this, she showed it to her grandfather, Graf. He was also surprised by what he saw. Graf immediately coordinated with the crew members, and they stopped the crab fishing, working quickly to pull the object out of the water. The sound of the operation woke Steven, Renal, and the other crew members, and Steven was shocked to see the structure. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Steven thought that if he could claim ownership of this structure, it could bring him a lot of benefit. He told Renal to start filming it right away. Steven began explaining that he had discovered the structure, trying to take full credit for it. Meanwhile, the crew members started removing the thick outer layer of the object, revealing that it had been here for many years. After a few layers were peeled off, CD and Graf were able to see the object clearly for the first time. When Graf cleaned up the area around it, they realized it was a spacecraft, Soviet Union spacecraft, the same one that had crashed and fallen into the ocean. This spacecraft had been in the Atlantic Ocean since then, and inside it was a pilot who had been controlling it. Now the question was, what to do with it? Since the spacecraft belonged to the Soviet Union and Russia, Graf decided that it should be handed over to the organization. However, Steven did not want that at all. He wanted to take full control of the research and get the credit for the discovery. Graf felt that it was only right to give credit to CD for the discovery, as she was the one who found it. This decision didn't sit well with Steven, who was angry and wanted the credit for himself. His temper flared, and he asked Renal to stop the video recording, effectively sabotaging the entire plan. Everyone then returned to the boat, but soon, Graf noticed that a snowstorm was approaching. The storm prevented them from moving forward, so Graf decided to stop the ship right there. He was deliberately not moving ahead because the storm could damage their entire device system. And sure enough, even after the storm passed, their communication systems weren't working. Graf was having trouble connecting with his crew members. Steven approached CD and Renal, reminding them that they were his students and that any discovery they made would fall under his research. CD didn't want to talk much about it, so she ignored the conversation. After a while, Bo approached CD and told her that he was concerned about her academics. He suggested that if she had the chance to continue her research, she should go ahead. Bo then gave CD an idea. She should go to the spacecraft and collect a sample from the astronaut's body for further research. However, CD was hesitant because of Steven, so Bo instructed Big, another crew member, to keep Steven occupied. Big went over to Steven and positioned himself in a way that Steven wouldn't be able to see what was happening. Taking advantage of this moment, CD left with Sweat, another crew member, and they headed toward the spacecraft. The spacecraft was at an extremely low temperature, and CD and Sweat worked together to investigate it further, hoping to gain more information. Meanwhile, Bo and Big kept Steven busy, and he had no idea that his students were directly working on the astronaut's body. CD and Sweat thoroughly examined the spacecraft and removed the astronaut's helmet. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that the astronaut didn't die from the cold, as they had initially thought. Instead, the cause of death seemed to be something entirely different. The astronaut's skin had an unusual texture. By now, the body should have decayed, but the details could only be revealed through testing. CD quickly extracted a sample from the dead astronaut's body, which would be enough for her research. She was ready to use her equipment to analyze the sample. While moving away from the spacecraft, Sweat noticed something unusual above it, a liquid flowing inside the ship with something written on it, like Water Bear. Neither CD nor Sweat understood what it was. Meanwhile, Big had kept Steven occupied for a long time, but eventually, Steven realized he was being deceived. He decided to leave but suddenly noticed CD, who was speaking to Bo in a strange manner. She then went with Bo into a room. Steven, suspicious, eavesdropped on their conversation. Inside the room, CD tested the astronaut's body sample using her equipment. After a short while, she revealed a shocking discovery. The astronaut's body contained a type of microorganism. Through further testing, she confirmed that there were extremely unusual microorganisms present in the astronaut's body. CD was trying to figure out the connection between these microorganisms and the situation they were facing. Meanwhile, a small fight broke out between Sweat and Big, and it seemed like Big had started developing feelings for Sweat. After their playful argument, Big noticed some strange marks on Sweat's ear. When he reached out to touch them, Sweat angrily pulled away, as if she didn't want to share anything about it. A short time later, a strange sound echoed through the ship. The slimy substance from earlier slowly made its way toward a crew member named Renal, who was sleeping. When Royal heard the sound, he went under his bed and used a flashlight to check. To his shock, he found the slimy substance bubbling and making a noise. Before he could react, it attacked him. Graf and the other crew members were busy catching crabs when Steven stormed over to them, furious. Steven confronted CD, threatening to expose how she was conducting biological experiments that were putting everyone's lives at risk. He had taken pictures of the spacecraft and collected all the evidence. Now, both CD and her grandfather, Graf, were in serious trouble. On the other hand, Sweat was staring at the marks on her body when Renal approached her. Renal asked her about the marks, and Sweat bluntly explained that they were from her boyfriend, who was very cruel. Now, Steven, along with the other crew members, arrived at the spacecraft where the astronaut's body had been. But to their shock, the astronaut's body was completely gone, vanished without a trace. Nobody could understand what had happened. Steven immediately blamed CD, but she genuinely had no idea about it. Steven, frustrated and shouting, confronted everyone, but this only made Graf, CD's grandfather, very angry. Graf, in a fit of rage, started to attack Steven, as he couldn't tolerate Steven speaking to him in such a way. CD was also scared by the situation. Unable to comprehend what was happening, Graf called an emergency meeting with the crew to figure out what was going wrong. Steven was also present, but something unusual was happening to him. His body started itching intensely. CD noticed this, but the itching soon escalated, and Steven began to move outside the boat in agony. CD immediately followed him. Steven's body was burning up, and he tore off his clothes, screaming in pain. Terrified, CD rushed him back inside to Graf and the rest of the crew. Once inside, the crew saw the alarming transformation in Steven. His skin had turned red, and it looked like it was liquefying. The temperature outside was freezing, so it was extremely dangerous for him to be out there. As they tried to hold him down, Steven's body started to morph even more rapidly. The most shocking part was that strange tentacles began to emerge from the back of his body. These tentacles were horrifying and seemed to cause Steven immense pain. Before anyone could do anything, Steven's body continued to liquefy until it looked like it was alive, moving by itself. His entire body was being pulled through a canal, heading toward an unknown direction, and only a small part of his body remained. CD, in a rush, managed to grab that small piece of his body before it disappeared entirely. She decided to keep it safe, hoping to study it further for her research. Now, CD couldn't hold back her fear any longer and, in front of everyone, revealed a terrifying truth: everything that was happening might be because of a virus. Initially, she hadn't thought of the virus as dangerous, but now it was clear that it had started to control its hosts, human bodies, and was causing them to liquefy. She speculated that the astronaut's body must have been controlled by the virus. Graf understood the gravity of the situation, and immediately ordered the crew to leave as soon as the storm cleared. Without wasting time, CD began testing the small sample of the virus, trying to understand it better. Meanwhile, Graf and Etka entered the transmission room, but when they moved forward, they saw bloodstains everywhere. Suddenly, a monstrous creature appeared before them, formed by combining parts of the spacecraft. The creature attacked Etka, and despite Graf's attempt to save him, Etka was killed. Graf barely escaped and ran back to warn the crew. He informed them about the deadly creature and that it had already killed Etka and could take down a person easily. Big and Bo quickly grabbed nitrogen gas cylinders, preparing for the creature's next attack. When the creature approached, Big threw the gas at it, freezing its body. However, the situation grew worse. Graf, covered in sweat, was now showing signs of infection. He too had been infected. He told CD and the others to leave as quickly as possible, as he knew he couldn't survive much longer. CD was devastated, crying because she knew her grandfather wouldn't make it. Graf, weakened, told her that if he started to turn into the monster, they must kill him to prevent him from causing harm. Meanwhile, Big went to the control room to try to restart the ship, but the creature attacked him there too. One by one, the crew members were killed by the creature, leaving CD as the only survivor. Graf, in his final moments, urged CD to steer the ship into an iceberg, hoping the crash would end the nightmare. CD followed his instructions, steering the ship toward a massive iceberg, and then jumped onto another iceberg for safety. The ship collided with the iceberg, creating a huge explosion. CD, relieved, watched the explosion, and as she did, a rescue team contacted her through the radio, signaling that help had arrived. CD kept waiting there, and the rescue team was on its way. Our story ends here. So,